Oh no, you're Mountain View. I event here at Traffic 611, the NAACP is honoring customers of the airport. Where'd you get Jeremy from? Oh, Bear.
Thank you, Mrs. Moore, Mrs. Moore Jr. Now, Mrs. Moore, I don't think you're the oldest person here, unless you're 93 and a half. Will my grandmother please stand? 93 and a half. We had a large corporation in the paper last week, and I named my corporation as Carryville Corporation, and her name is Carrie, was born on that plantation. She was blessed enough to, I was the first person out of our generation, out of our family ever, to be born outside of Mississippi. Thank you, Mom. And she took our family from Mississippi out of the plantation to Chicago, and we started a new life there. Once again, Mama, Papa, we thank you for all you've done. Without further ado, please step up and grab yourself something to eat.
When you're ready for it. I'll fix up some of this post. Right here. Yeah, I know, and I think he misinterpreted some things. I say if you want a picture now, that thing in the background will probably be on video.
Oh, you cannot? Because of my feet?
No, you love it.
Mike North.
Greetings, and welcome to the Baltimore Metropolitan Area Chapter of the 9th 10th Horse Cavalry Association, the Buffalo Soldiers. I'm your host, Trooper Manny Locke, and today we're going to learn about the rich Maryland history dealing with African Americans who have served their country. Did you know that over 133,000 African Americans participated in the Civil War? Of that, 33,000 died. Today, we're going to learn a little bit about that rich history.
Soldiers would proudly wear.
One of their first battles was with 250 Mexicans when they come across the border. And imagine 6 feet black men with white officers fighting 200 Mexicans. Well, when they went back across the border, there was only 50 of them left. And that was the first battle for the 9th Cavalry.
In the beginning, there were 6 black regiments, 2 cavalry, the 9th and 10th, and 4 infantry, the 38th, 39th, 40th, and 41st.
Imagine a lot of these men that had just come out of slavery, and a lot of them had been veterans of the Civil War. Some of them didn't even read and write. And one thing that Congress did when they formed this regiment, they put assign a chaplain, a preacher to each regiment. And his purpose was for their spiritual and for education. And some of these guys went on and got college degrees and stuff after they served for so many years.
The Buffalo Soldiers would serve in forts from California to Vermont. Despite their brave heroics on the battlefield, never be allowed to forget they were black. Equipment was inferior. They got the worst food and horses. Through it all, they would endure.
The main thing they went for was the money. They had a place where they could get 3 meals a day, which wasn't too good of food. A lot of times they didn't get none at all when they were patrolling in the West. But,
Good afternoon.
I'd like to thank everyone for taking, you could have been anywhere today, and you decided to come here and learn some history, American history. I think this is an absolute wonderful idea to come together and learn some untold stories, some unsung heroes that we have here. We have the privilege of having the Baltimore Metropolitan Chapter, the 9th and 10th Cavalry, the Buffalo Soldiers, to present here. And we also have an original Tuskegee Airman and a heritage Tuskegee Airman. So we're excited to hear their stories. And I hope you all enjoy yourselves as history unfolds itself. Before we get started, I just wanted to have co-owner Mr. Jones come up from Cafe 611 and say something.
Michelle, thank you for putting this on. It's our pleasure, the family, Jones family, to have each and every one of you all here at our restaurant today. On behalf of my entire staff, some working today and some is just here to learn something about history. My dear daughter Mike, who's managing the kitchen today, we all thank you. It's a true blessing for you all to be here. This wouldn't have happened without the local chapter of the NAACP. Our president, Mr. Gee, has stepped out beyond what we would ever think 5-10 years ago. And I sort of patted my business behind him. He took over an organization that was in great need of great leadership. And that organization now has promoted him to higher heights within the state of Maryland. His efforts, his vision has taken off in this community. I personally want to thank you for what you've done. Let's give him a hand. I'll be remiss without saying we've been here for 3 years tomorrow. Some of the toughest 3 years of my 55 years, I can tell you that. One of the things we had to do here was we had to change the community before we would accept it as a quality restaurant. And I know we've overcome some of the stigma that is alive in this community, and we have representatives. Thank you so much, representatives, for coming out. It's a personal pleasure for my wife and I to see you here today. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our president of the local chapter of the NAACP.
Thank you. It is an honor to be here today in front of those who made it possible for us, all races, all creed, all nationalities to be here. Many gave their lives so that we could do that. And we are here to honor the hero you all are. And I want to thank Randy Jones, who is an integral part of this community. Without a partnership of businesses like this, who will be willing, to forget, remember that they are business people, and then open their stores to us without resources, we will not be able to make it today. And without further delay, I'm going to turn over to the person that made it possible. Our chair for membership and fundraising. She's here with us. Michelle, come over. Yeah. It's a good program, and she's the chair of membership. And I want to say, because she has some membership forms over there, and we have some great people who will be joining here today. So Randy will come back here and tell you that we have some great people that are going to lead the way in terms of membership, because with membership we can do more of this. We don't have to wait until we have opportunities, but we can do this on a regular basis. And we all know that you by coming here today, you are showing that this is something that we should be doing more and more. So please support us, give a good hand to Michelle, and then I'll turn you over to her. Thank you very much.
Right before we get started, I want to say one more thing, and this is not to be taken lightly. We do have a spouse, a widow of the Tuskegee Airmen. A lot of wives, if you are a wife, you know you're the backbone to family. And I'd like to say thank you for coming. Ms. Moore, would you please stand?
If you'll excuse me for not
Okay.
Well, she has the red jacket. And we're honored to have you here also.
Thank you.
Okay, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce the Baltimore Metropolitan Chapter 9th and 10th Cavalry Association of the Buffalo Soldiers.
Personnel Pratt, and I'm the reenacting coordinator of the Baltimore chapter of the 9th and 10th Horse Cavalry Association, better known as the Buffalo Soldiers. It is indeed an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today and to share that rich history with you. But before I get started, what I'd like to do, I would like to introduce my colleagues who have come with me today in order to help make this event happen. First, I would like to introduce our current president. His name is Trooper Manny Locke. He is also a member of the reenactment committee. The next person I would like to introduce is Trooper Gene Fulton. Trooper Fulton is our current vice president of the Buffalo. He is also a member of the reenactment committee as well. Next, I would like to introduce Trooper Martin Cruz. He is our past president of the Baltimore chapter. I'd like to do is introduce Trooper Orlando Scott. He is also a member of the reenactment committee. I can truly say without my colleagues, we would not be able to present the history to you. I mean, not only do we do events as a whole, but we've also done events individually. There are times that we have maybe 2 or 3 events in a day. And because of the knowledge that they have, we're able to split the chapter up, split the committee up, in order to fulfill what we need to do in order to present the history of the Buffalo Soldiers. Thank you all. The next thing I would like to say is that I indicated that we're the Baltimore chapter of the 9th and 10th Horse Cavalry Association. There are 28 other chapters that are located throughout the United States. We have one in Germany. We also have a chapter in Hawaii. And all of us tell the history of the Buffalo Soldiers. Now, without any further ado, there's some things that I would like to explain to you. That what African Americans have done as a people in order to defend this nation, it didn't just start with the Buffalo Soldiers. It started years before then. It started with the French and Indian War. African Americans served in the colonial militia. It then later went on to the American Revolution. 5,000 African Americans served in the Continental Army under the command of General George Washington. It then started in the War of 1812, where again African Americans served in the Continental Army. They were instrumental in 3 battles during the War of 1812. They were instrumental in the Battle of Bladensburg. They were also present at Fort McHenry. And they were also under the command of Colonel Andrew Jackson at the Battle of New Orleans. Their participation then went even further as African Americans. In March of 1836, at a small Spanish mission located in San Antonio, Texas, they were among the 189 defenders. While Texas was trying to obtain its independence from Mexico, African Americans were among the defenders of a place called the Alamo. They were also present during the Civil War. In 1862, when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, Frederick Douglass, the famous abolitionist, persuaded Abraham Lincoln to sign legislation allowing African Americans to serve in the Union Army and Union Navy. During that time period, 189,000 African Americans served in the Union Army and the Union Navy. One of the things that you need to know, the movie Glory was based on the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. The 54th Massachusetts Regiment was the first regiment created under the title of U.S. Colored Troops. After that, 177 more regiments were created. Now, in July of 1863, 2 weeks after the Battle of Gettysburg, the men of the 54th engaged the Confederate forces at Fort Wagner, South Carolina. Now, between July of 1863 and when the Civil War ended in April of 1865, 38,000 African Americans lost their lives. That's less than 2 years. Altogether, the grand total of lives lost through the Civil War was well over 600,000. When the Civil War ended, what had happened is that the country was going through a period of Reconstruction. During that period of Reconstruction, people were looking westward for a better way of life. The U.S. Congress decided to create, during that time, additional regiments in order for the West to be protected. And of course, in doing so, that's when they created 2 African American regiments of cavalry that were known as the 9th and the 10th. And of course, they created 4 regiments of infantry, the 38th, 39th, 40th, and 41st. Before the infantry went westward, they were then renamed the 24th and the 25th. The 9th Cavalry was created in New Orleans, Louisiana. The 10th Cavalry was created in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. We only needed 1,000 men in order for these regiments to go forward. They received them in less than 1 month's time. And the reason why is because both regiments consisted of former slaves, freemen, as well as soldiers who had fought during the Civil War under the U.S. colored troops. Now, interesting enough, both the 9th and the 10th enlisted men were African American, from the rank of private through sergeant major. But the officers' ranks, from second lieutenant through general, their ranks were commanded by white officers. The other interesting thing that you need to know is that as far as pay was concerned, these men earned an average of $13 a month, period. That was what they earned. When the 9th and the 10th went forward, their first mission was not that of trying to control the Native Americans. And I will go into that in just a few minutes. Their first mission was that of security as well as protection. They were first ordered to protect the wagon train as they made their way westward. They were asked to protect the U.S. mail, to protect the railroads. They were also responsible for building and creating and laying telegraph lines. They were land surveyors. They mapped all the watering holes west of the Mississippi. They were also responsible for maintaining the peace in the various settlements in the West, because at that time, law enforcement was few and far between. Yes, there were the Texas Rangers, but of course, their only enforcement was the state of Texas. There weren't that many sheriffs, constables, or even police officers. Therefore, it was the job of the U.S. Army to do the protection. And the majority of that protection came with the Buffalo Soldiers. That was in 1866 when they got started. In 1867, their mission changed. 1867 marked the beginning of the Indian Wars. The Indian Wars were started for one reason and one reason only, and that was greed. Prior to the Civil War, a number of Indian tribes in the southwest region of the United States signed an agreement in various treaties indicating that they wanted to live in peace. The only thing that they asked, they did not want anyone to encroach upon their land, especially the land that is located in the Dakotas, known as the Black Hills. The Black Hills of the Dakotas was considered to be their ancient burial ground, and they did not want anyone to desecrate that area. But what had happened? Gold was discovered in the Black Hills of the Dakotas. And because gold was discovered, thousands of settlers entered the Black Hills, desecrated Indians' burial ground. Not to mention adding insult to injury, a lot of them decided to start killing off their main food supply, the buffalo. The buffalo was considered to be their primary source for the Native Americans. And what the people were doing responsible for killing them, they killed them for sport, they killed them for their hides, their tongues, even their horns, leaving the rest of the carcass to just rot away. Native Americans were not going to stand by and allow that to happen. And of course, they immediately went on the warpath. The U.S. government, in turn, would not allow this to happen. And they immediately called all 10 cavalry regiments into action, to include the men of the 9th and 10th. The Cheyenne Indians were the first to engage the men of the 9th U.S. Cavalry. After a number of skirmishes, they were very surprised at how well these men defended themselves. So much so that they honored and revered them, and honored them after their most sacred animal, the buffalo. They looked at their hair. They looked at their skin color. They looked at how these men defended themselves, so much so that they honored them and called them, and that is how they received the name, the Buffalo Soldiers. By the time the Indian Wars had ended, 18 Buffalo Soldiers had received the Congressional Medal of Honor. 18. Their area of protection included Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, California, Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, Utah. That was their area of responsibility. Some of the great Indian leaders admired the Buffalo Soldiers, and I'll give you two. Geronimo. Geronimo was considered to be one of the best Apache war leaders that the United States Army had ever faced. It took 5,000 U.S. troops to get Geronimo out of the Black Hills of the Dakotas. But it was Geronimo. Buffalo Soldiers were involved in less than 10%. They were not, and I repeat, they were not Indian fighters. They did not participate in the raiding of villages. What they did, they were more responsible for protection than anything else. And also the other thing that they were not responsible for, especially when it came to the destruction of the Indian village. During the last remaining onslaughts against the Native Americans happened at Wounded Knee, South Dakota, in 1890. In 1890, elements of the 7th, the 5th, and the 4th U.S. Cavalries were asked to go to Wounded Knee to the Sioux Reservation in order to remove weapons that they had stashed and stored. When those units arrived at Wounded Knee, men of the 9th U.S. Cavalry were asked to provide support. When the men of the 9th arrived, an onslaught had already ensued by the other cavalry regiments. When the 9th Cavalry was ordered to move forward, which they did, they overlooked Wounded Knee. They were then asked to participate in what was going on. They refused that order. The commanding officer of the units assigned to the 9th was unfortunately relieved of duty. The non-commissioned officers were then asked to go forward. They refused to obey the orders as well. The men of the 9th were ordered to report back to the rear for repercussions later. This was one of the few times that these men refused to obey a direct order. And the reason why is because why would they continue to inflict casualties on a people that had already been defeated. They were not going to go ahead and participate in that type of massacre again. When the Indian Wars were over, the Buffalo Soldiers went on to participate in the Spanish-American War. During that time, the men of the 9th and 10th were instrumental in flanking the Cuban forces, allowing Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders to secure San Juan and Kettle Hill. When Teddy Roosevelt returned to the United States, he honored and revered the Buffalo Soldiers while they were there in Cuba. But when he sought re-election for the second time, in order to appease some of the Southern vote, they asked him, what did those men do? What did those African-American men do for you during the Spanish-American War? And his response was, they did absolutely nothing. They did nothing to help defend or support them. Well, if that's the case, then why did 6 of the Buffalo Soldiers then receive the Congressional Medal of Honor, which then brought the total to 24? These were some of the myths that the Buffalo Soldiers had to face. After the Spanish-American War, they went on to participate in the year 1900. They went on to participate in the Boxer Rebellion, which took place in China. Men of the 9th and the 10th and the 24th were part of a multinational force that was responsible for going into Peking, China, in order to subdue and to help release 11 nations that were under siege. Their embassies were under siege by a secret Chinese faction known as the Boxers. And the Buffalo Soldiers were part of that multinational force. When the Boxer Rebellion was over, the Buffalo Soldiers were instrumental in the Philippine insurrection. And then, in 1916, General Jack Pershing, better known as Black Jack Pershing, insisted that the Buffalo Soldiers participate with him in order to pursue and capture Pancho Villa. Pancho Villa was a Mexican revolutionary, and what he was responsible for doing was conducting raids across the U.S. and Mexican border in order to fund his revolution. But what had happened is that what he did not realize was that the Buffalo Soldiers were hot in pursuit of him. The reason why General Pershing earned the name Blackjack was because of his admiration and respect for the Buffalo Soldiers. Of course, the Buffalo Soldiers went on to participate in World War I and in World War II. And in World War II, a number of units were spun off by the Buffalo Soldiers. And of course, they include our colleagues here today, the Tuskegee Airmen. It also includes the 92nd Infantry Division. It includes the 761st Tank Battalion. It also includes the Triple Nickel, the 555. All of these units were part of the creation of the Buffalo Soldiers. Now, I've already mentioned to you all the attributes that the Buffalo Soldiers went through and all the good things that they have done. But to tell you that they did not face racism and prejudice is an understatement. That's exactly what they faced. When they first got started, between 1866 and 1872, they received the hand-me-downs of practically every unit in the United States Army. They received the worst and the worst of horses, uniforms, weapons, and equipment. And it wasn't until 1872 when both Colonel Grissom as well as Colonel Hatch persuaded the War Department that the Buffalo Soldiers need to be equipped well better in order to do their job. They did not start receiving new equipment until after 1872. The very people that they were asked to protect and to defend in the various towns did not want them there. When their job was over, they wanted them to leave. The reason why was because of the color of their skin. And of course, they were denied anything and everything. They weren't allowed in the restaurants. And there were some towns, unfortunately, where riots had ensued between the Buffalo Soldiers and the townspeople. One riot in particular happened in San Angelo, Texas, right after the Spanish-American War. Sergeant had gone into town. They had just gotten back from Cuba. He was beaten up. His uniform was torn to shreds. They had stripped him of his stripes. When he got back to the fort, the soldiers were so incensed that they decided to pay the town a visit. During that visit, a number of town people were killed, along with a number of soldiers. But in the end, 15 Buffalo soldiers were convicted. They were later executed. No one in that town was arrested, nor did any repercussions happen, other than to the Buffalo soldiers. The other thing that I need to share with you, we have several Buffalo soldiers who resided and lived within the state of Maryland. 3 of them are Congressional Medal of Honor winners. They include, even from this area, William O. Wilson was born and raised in Hagerstown. He was a Congressional Medal of Honor winner. Sergeant Augustus Wally, who was born and raised in Reisterstown, was a Congressional Medal of Honor winner. As a matter of fact, he received his first Congressional Medal of Honor during the Indian Wars. He was supposed to receive a second one during the Spanish-American War. But because of the color of his skin, they decided not to give him that medal. Instead, they gave him the second highest honor. And then, of course, there was Thomas Boone, who was born and raised in PG County. There was another Marylander who was also very important within the Buffalo soldiers. He was not a Congressional Medal of Honor winner, but he was the first African-American chaplain assigned to the 10th U.S. Cavalry. And his name was Chaplain Henry Benton Plummer. He was instrumental in starting the first educational system within the U.S. Army. But unfortunately, he could not continue because of the racism and prejudice of the day. He was found unfit for duty, he was court-martialed, and later thrown out of the Army. A few years ago, the Baltimore chapter, along with the D.C. chapter, along with the family of Chaplain Plummer, were able to change his honorable discharge, for his dishonorable discharge, to an honorable discharge. Now, the other thing that I need to make mention here is, of course, we have a number of ladies that serve in our chapter. And they serve in our chapter because of one reason. That one reason that they serve in our chapter is because of a brave woman who decided to impersonate a man, and she enlisted in the 38th Infantry. Her name was Kathy Williams. She came in portraying a man and changed her name from Kathy Williams to William Kathy. They did not, and for 2 years, she served in the 38th Infantry. They did not know that she was a woman until she was stricken with cholera for the 3rd time. That's when they had to do a physical examination, and that's when they realized, oh my goodness, I've been serving with her. So of course she was immediately discharged. And of course upon that discharge, she later went on to California where she opened up her own business. Now the last thing that I needed to mention to you about the Buffalo Soldiers is in relation to what's going on today. All of you know about the U.S. Park Service. The Buffalo Soldiers were one of the first park rangers under the Park Service. The other thing that I need to mention to you is that all of you are familiar with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Within the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, there is U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The Border Patrol, which falls under Customs and Border Protection, is responsible for protecting our borders. The Buffalo Soldiers were one of the first within responsible for protecting the borders of the United States and Mexico. As a matter of fact, there are a number of Border Patrol stations that are located in Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico that were dedicated to and honored by the Buffalo Soldiers. And last but not least, the other thing I need to mention to you, there was one West Point graduate that I need to mention, and I know Tuskegee Airmen will mention another. The third African American to graduate from the U.S. Academy at West Point was named Colonel Charles Young. Colonel Young did an outstanding job as a Buffalo Soldier. He did an outstanding job as an officer. He was supposed to have been the first African American promoted to the rank of general. But unfortunately, because of the prejudice of the day, he was not. They said he wasn't fit for duty. And one of the amazing things that he did, he rode on horseback from Ohio to Washington, D.C. in order to prove that he was fit for duty. But yet, they would not give him that 1 star. When his memoirs were finally done, somebody asked him, what is the worst thing that you would ever wish on an enemy? And his response was to go through being an African American, going through 4 years at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. During that time, during his 4 years, no one outside of an instructional setting said a word to him. No one. And the 2 Medal of Honor, and then the 2 cadets before him, Henry Flipper, as well as John Alexander, also face the same thing. Ladies and gentlemen, it has indeed been a pleasure to present the history of the Buffalo Soldiers to you, and I thank you for allowing us to share that history with you today. Are there any questions?
Have you taped your presentation?
No, sir, I haven't.
That would be very beneficial, especially in our churches and other settings, to be able to share this information. A lot of times it's hard to get young people to come out, but sometimes as pastors we can capture them.
We have had a few tapings here and there, but none to the extent of explaining everything from point A to point B. Yeah.
Sergeant, I want to apologize for Frederick County. This was well publicized. We should have 1,000 people here right now.
Hey, we appreciate the people that are here. We always look at it like this. Even if one person shows up, at least they're able to hear what we have to say and we're able to present that history to them.
It's a misjustice for our community throughout our whole school system, not in this education. We as a community have to work on that. We have to get back to the school board as they're talking about cutting out the sports and the swimming and all that. Someone needs to rewrite the curriculums to put us in this curriculum. And it could start right here in this room. But we got much work to do. And they have led the way. It's going to have to take an act of Congress to get them back here because people want them all over the nation. But we can, when they leave, we can have another meeting. Maybe we'll have our local president to spearhead that, or maybe we'll have one of our pastors to spearhead that, maybe we have a business owner to spearhead, or we have Montgomery County leaders here as well to spearhead. But we need to educate our children. I was educated in Illinois, and the Black history was playing tongue, bid whist, spades, and the teacher gave everybody a seat. And that was in the 60s, 70s. I thank you for what you've done, educated us, and I'm just asking that my fellow Fredericktonians, let's get busy, let's have another meeting, and let's talk to our school board that says, how come you have forgot about us? Thank you, sir.
The film that was playing behind before you started, is that available?
You're going to have to ask Trooper Manny Locke behind you. He's the creator of that.
Oh, you created?
Any other questions? Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, on behalf of the Baltimore chapter of the 9th and 10th Cavalry Association, it has definitely been a pleasure speaking with you today, and I thank you.
5 minutes. Thank you. Reserve right here.
The airmen on the front, and then the facts on the back. Mrs. Moore is selling these, they're $5 a card. She has them available, but she'll be back in just a moment. Also, the Buffalo Soldiers have a raffle, and they're $5 a card, a ticket, and it's to win a car, a brand new car. 5 chances to win a car. And you can see Trooper Lot for tickets. And also, one other thing, I have membership cards for the NAACP right here. You can come see me and get your membership. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're privileged to be here, Dr. Brown and our ladies of the Tuskegee Airmen. I just want to clarify something for you, because sometimes we have 3 major categories of Tuskegee Airmen. Like Dr. Byron, he's an original. What that means is he served between 1941, June of 1941, to roughly June of 1949. That's roughly the period that Tuskegee Airmen, that originals, served. Now, heritage people, some are the spouses of original members. I'm a heritage member because I'm an offspring of a heritage member, former Tuskegee Army Airfield Fire Chief. So that's why I'm a heritage. Then we have what we call associate members. Now I want to make something clear to you. We do have some lovely women that are original Tuskegee Airmen. Some served as civilians at the Tuskegee Army Airfield. In fact, I live not too far from the original Tuskegee Airman, Belva King. His wife, the last wife I knew he had, was a supervisor in the parachute frigate shop. And we also had at Lockburn Air Force Base, the last physical area where Tuskegee Airmen served, we also had a WAF squad. So there are women, original Tuskegee Airmen. So I hope you understand. Because in a way, this picture depicts the last base that Tuskegee Airmen were at. The reason I say it depicts that, at Lockburn Air Force Base, the commander of that base was B.O. Davis. And it pretty much, for all practical purposes, the leadership was all black. And all of the people, the maintenance folks, the food service people, the trainers, and at that base, it was called the 477th Composite Group, the last base Tuskegee Airmen served before. While integration was officially approved under Truman, it took a couple years after it was signed before they started breaking up these units. So I just want you to put that in proper perspective.
And may I interject
Yes, ma'am.
that some of us are the wives of original
Yeah, well, that's
Tuskegee
what I
Airmen,
said.
and we were there during that period of time.
Yeah, there were wives at Tuskegee, there were wives at Godman, and there were wives at Lockburn, and all of them had some hard times getting places to live, you know. Now that was a very, and you know, a lot of those wives went through a lot. Some gave up jobs to be with their husbands. Now I was, as a youngster, the reason I'm so connected, other than being married, I was a paper boy, and before I went to service, and I served during Korea with 4 original Tuskegee Airmen, one's in our chapter, Woody Crocker. And I said B.O. Davis Jr. and Bill Campbell and George Spanker Roberts, who I babysat his older 2 kids when they were at Tuskegee Army. Now that aside. Now I usually acknowledge, because we love them, the Buffalo Soldiers, because there is a nexus between the Buffalo Soldiers and all, as it was indicated earlier, black Army or Army Air Force units. Now, one thing I want to point out, our trooper indicated about Lieutenant Flipper, well, and a chaplain. Well, they had to straighten out Lieutenant, the first graduate of the military academy, Lieutenant Flipper. It took a way long time before they got his record squared away to an honorable discharge. His bust is now at one of the buildings at West Point. And so, you know, when we look at Lieutenant Flipper, the next 2, and which would include Colonel Young, as was indicated, there was Flipper, I can't think of the second. But anyway, the 4th person who we kind of know of, which is right there, he also went through that silent treatment at West Point. Now, a couple of matters that you may not know is, as it's been indicated, Colonel Young should have been the first general in our United States Army, but due to racism and all the other things that went with it, he wasn't. Now, the person that became the first general officer was B.O. Davis Jr.'s father. Now, he and another gentleman named Lee were what we call in the military Mustang officers. They were ex-enlisted to commission. And the reason I want to point that out, because there was some nexus to us modern people. B.O. Davis Jr. became the nexus from his dad and became the first aviator in the United States Army Air Force. And there was a gentleman, Colonel Lee, who retired in '39. His son was a West Point graduate in 1950, who became one of the first U.S. Army engineers. And he served during Korea. And so, you know, we do have history and nexus between the beginning and the end. And it was kind of interesting, you know, that the first 2 real prominent that you all might know of, you know, were ex-enlisted. And they only had 2 ex-enlisted to get commissioned. And when World War II started, we only had 2 regular Army officers.
Wow.
That was father, B.O. Davis Jr., Brigadier General, and son. Now, we had some chaplains, about 3 chaplains, and that was it. Regular officers in our armed forces. And they emanated, in a sense, from the Buffalo Soldiers. Now, get into Tuskegee Airmen. In 1925, at the Army War College that was then located in Kansas, a group of brilliant white officers determined that we, as people of color, Negroes as we were called then, we didn't have brains enough to be pilots. Now, B.O. Davis Jr. technically was the first person of the armed forces that flew in an Army Air Corps plane, because in 1935, when you're a West Pointer, you go through the junior year and you get a shot at looking at all of the branches of your service. Well, Davis, I think at field in New York, he did get a ride and all of the, what you go through in case you were permitted into the Army Air Corps back then. Well, he also did apply to be a pilot in his last year at West Point, and he got that lovely letter back called rejection. And basically it was because the Army Air Force didn't want any persons of color in it, and they didn't have any intentions. So around 1939, when they finally passed something, civil, civilian pilot training, CPT, about 4 or 5 black colleges got some people to get trained there. Well, most people don't realize we would have had a march on Washington in 1940, but the Port Reporters Union, that's how B.O. Davis helped B.O. Davis Sr. get to be a general, so things cooled down. And on June 1941, before Pearl Harbor, blacks were part of the Army Air Corps. The enlisted people went to Chinook, and the pilots started their training at Tuskegee. It was called Tuskegee Institute back then. And I'm sure you know Tuskegee Institute is famous for Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver. And as Dr. Byers will tell you, the young ladies, and like me, we all went through the most famous spot in Tuskegee that you couldn't guess what that is. Chi Hall train station. About 8 miles from Tuskegee. And they had segregated, I don't even think it had when I went through there, it looked like it was a mud floor. But anyway, that was our nice, famous spot. Tuskegee was an interesting experience. And I want to say something to you folks, just for your own knowledge. Tuskegee Airmen originals do not wish you to ever call the Tuskegee experiment, because at the time there was an experiment in Tuskegee at the Veterans Administration Hospital. That's where they were injecting whatever you get with syphilis, and they were injecting people, males, with that, black, and you weren't getting any treatment. Well, so when you talk to Tuskegee Airmen Original, use the word experience, not experiment. Or you'll slap me. But in all seriousness, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, that was probably one of the most wonderful things. And you know the reason the Tuskegee Airmen were successful? Something young people don't do today. Even though he was an enlisted, kept them guns going, them 150 caliber machine guns in the wings of those aircraft. They all helped each other. If someone didn't know something, people that knew something pitched in. Same with the pilot classes. Some of you have probably seen that film about the Tuskegee Airmen. There are 2 mistakes. Hollywood has to have its pound of flesh, as a guy named Hank Henry used to be our chapter's Speakers Bureau chairman. And well, anyway, Eleanor Roosevelt was not flown by an air cadet. She was flown by Chief Charles Anderson, who was one of the early certified pilots of color. He is the one that flew Eleanor Roosevelt. The second, grossly wrong, there has never been an aviation cadet of the Tuskegee Airmen that committed suicide because they failed to graduate. Heck, most of them knew. You know, when the 99th then Pursuit Squadron was created, you only had about 18 planes. Everybody knew somebody wasn't going to make it. Wow. And at the first classes for over a year, they were taken on cream of the crop, the college people and all that. Now this picture up here depicts the first class. It was B.O. Davis Jr., then captain, and 12 air cadets. The people that first got their wings first was B.O. Davis Jr. as a captain, and the other 4 were air cadets. One of them was Spanky Roberts. Spanky Roberts was kind of Davis's number 2 guy throughout World War I up through 1945 before they went to Lockport Air Force Base. I knew Colonel Roberts on the base. I knew him as the ROTC guy in Tuskegee, and I knew him with the 51st Fighter Wing in Korea. So I have to admit I'm prejudiced. He's my hero and my mentor. But this is first class. Now this gentleman up here, some of these ladies, probably they've run into him. That was Melvin T. Jackson. Now Melvin T. Jackson, it was taken about a year ago. Melvin T. Jackson is 91 years old. He was a squadron commander of the 302nd, and he was a hero. He got this thing, he shot down an enemy plane. Now, people will say during World War II, how come we didn't have a lot of aces, those that are looking at the John Wayne stuff? Well, the reason we didn't have a lot of aces, this was our only ace. Our only ace was Lee A. Archer, who just got buried a week or so, maybe 2 weeks ago at Arlington. So deserved. General, then Colonel Davis, up all through his whole career, West Pointer, spit and polish. Well, when the 332nd went over, and they got the assignment to be escort the bombers, and all of the bomber crews were white. The good colonel said, do not leave your escort. Or if you did, I have something wonderful for you when you land. They knew what that would be. So that's why the escorted was, I don't care what anybody says, I don't think there was any group that escorted any better throughout World War I, even though pilots exaggerate and all that good stuff. I think it deserved its record. It deserved the Presidential Unit Citation that it gave. And Thias, who was the ground guy, ex-enlisted, and he ended up being a 2-star general, and his last job was he was in charge of the United States Air Force Accounting Office out of Denver, Colorado. We had congressmen, we had judges. I mean, my generation had these gentlemen like Dr. Byron, some of these ladies. They were our heroes. They were our models. And regrettably, I see today, we don't have too many models of color. And one of the things we try to stress in the Tuskegee Airmen, these presentations, I regret that they're in the 100th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders in here. You that are still parents with young people, please sit down and have a little talk with them and get them to go back to school, because you're not worth anything if you can't be certified in something to give to this society. And we mean that sincerely. Now, the East Coast chapter, we teach people to fly. We have programs that gain funds to give scholarships to the young people that are still interested in getting educated. And I say this because you have to have a little humor, but we're serious. We tell young ladies when one of those guys comes up, whispers in your ear, you know what he whispered. You tell them, I'm sorry, but I have to put you on hold till you get certified. But if you need something instant, I suggest you go to Jiffy. Now, I want to point a couple things to you just before I get Dr. Byron the original. You know, history has not served us well as people of color. So much of what we have done has been left out of history books. Many of you operate under the illusion that there was never any black pilots other than the Tuskegee Airmen during World War II. Well, that's not true. There was a gentleman named Oliver Holmes, who was very light-skinned, who was a Navy pilot. The Navy knew he wasn't white, and Oliver knew, so they had an understanding. You don't tell, I don't tell. But you'd have to dig deep into history, but that's a true story. If I said to you about the Golden 13, wonder if any of you have any idea what that is? Well, that's the first 13 through the Navy OCS blacks that got commissioned. 12 of them became ensigns, and one who had not finished college became a war officer. So they're referred to as the Golden 13. Some of you have heard of the gentleman named Dorian Miller who got the Navy Cross when he helped save. Well, we had 3 others that did the same thing. Moffett Point Marines. Anybody know what that is? Well, those were the gentlemen, including my father-in-law, late father-in-law, I should say, that went down to the rear end of Camp Lejeune in Jacksonville, North Carolina, and we went through horrible training. I don't think it was much better when I went through training. But anyway, those were the original gentlemen. And it took 175 years for the Marine Corps to let persons of color in their door. The Marine Corps did not have any black officers during World War II. One gentleman became an officer in 1945 on November 10th, which is the Marine Corps birthday. They commissioned him on the 10th, transferred him into reserve on the 11th. Most of people that heard about Moffett Point Marines heard about Ashmark Johnson, an ex-Buffalo soldier, an ex-Navy steward who went to the Marine Corps. But that's all. And then the first pilot of color in the Marine Corps was Frank E. Peterson, who became a pilot in '52 and did serve in Korea during that time. And we also have a couple of blacks that got commissioned during World War II in the Navy through what was called the V-12 program. That was the forerunner to Navy ROTC. Now, because you're going to ask me who they were. Roland, he was an ambassador to something that I can't remember his name at the moment, but there were 2 additional people. And when you look at our history in perspective, in 1940, we had 1 general officer of color. In 1954, we got the second one, D.O. Davis Jr. We got it in the Air Force while after serving in Korea, we got it. And then it took, ladies and gentlemen, until 1969, that name, Frederick Davidson became a general. It took probably from that period forward. And, but, you know, I think persons of color did darn well. Now, you're going to say, why does he use that term, persons of color? Well, personally, I tell everyone, do not ever call Tuskegee Airmen minorities. Because we don't believe in being minority. Minority to me, personally, means we're less than number 1. We're number 1 in Belva. So that's why we'll use that. And we don't like the term blackboard, because they don't have it. Maybe chalkboard will accept it. But, you know, these are little things people say that perhaps they don't realize what they're saying. And then the only other thing I want to tell you, you know, when you hear about relieving all those Jewish people from those concentration camps, you rarely hear about the 761st Night Attack. Well, they were the first ones to meet the Russians where Pat told. And they were in some of the first group to help free those people in those concentration camps. So I can assure you, everything that's written isn't necessarily true. And I can assure you that there's been a lot left out of our history books. But we try to give a summary to put things in perspective. And we try to go and help put in place some of the things that young people have not heard, even some of us, because it took extensive research to find out some of this. Now, I'm going to yield to my friend and original Tuskegee Airman, he'll tell you how he got to be an original Tuskegee Airman, not voluntarily, I can assure you. But he's going to get up here, he's going to talk to you. And I want to introduce you to Dr. O. Byron Sr. And he's one of the persons that made the GI Bill work for him.
Wait a second. Not that bad.
Okay. He's one of the gentlemen that made the World War II GI Bill work. Because I always tell people, if it were not for the World War II GI Bill, there'd be a whole lot of folks of all shades that would still be looking at the north end of that southbound mule.
It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much. I always do that, and I look at it anymore the rest of the day. I was drafted. Now, it's different things being drafted and voluntary. Very simple. Uncle Sam sent me a letter that said, "Greetings." And I was minding my own business. I was in college. Since my sophomore year at Morgan State University, I was Morgan State College. Just finished my sophomore year. Pretty good. That's some good grades. There comes this letter. It came from home. I didn't know when you're in school, you get a letter from home, hold up, something like this, so you can see the little rectangle inside the letter. You folks know what that is? I'm sure you do, but I did. When I opened the letter, though, there was nothing in there but this other letter. And it said, "Greetings." I knew what that was. That was my invitation to join, my invitation being selected to the Army.
Yes.
That's the kind of letter you don't refuse. You just get up and go. Except one thing, it wasn't 1941.
Well, I didn't say you.
No, but you said it, that's when it started.
Yeah.
I got in the Air Force, in Tuskegee Airmen in 1942. Let's get that straight. Well, why are you laughing at me? But that's when it was. February of 1942, I had to leave school and go. The first getting in and sent to training ground. Now, training ground, every once in a while you're going to see me laugh at something that I'm saying because it was funny. I was born and raised in the Bronx, New York. Uncle Sam drafted me, and guess where he sent me? Upton, New York, which is about 65 miles north of New York City. That was my first training ground. And of course, where do you think I went on the weekends? One day. Now, but it was enjoyable then. And as Billy talked about She-Hulk, I was trained as an armorer. An armorer is and each airplane, fighter plane now, has 6 to 8 guns in each wing. 1, 4 on this side, 4 on this side. My job to make sure the guns in the wings. Now you've seen pictures of airplanes fighting at night, and you see those flashes of white light. Those are called phosphorus bullets. Every 5th bullet in the stream of bullets to the fossil. But in the daytime, you see puffs of white smoke. So our job was to make sure they were put in the split line, because that helps the pilot shoot where he wants to shoot. You see, if he's shooting over there and the white place is going over here, then you know, just bring it back. But I was trained to do that. And I'm smiling again because after I learned how to do that, they transferred me. But that wasn't so bad. And so when I got transferred, I got a promotion, so it was all right. And I was transferred only because they found me like a type. And I had to type because my girlfriend, college sweetheart, and my sister was telling me, don't write print. And after a while, don't print, type. I'm going to say, no, that's how I got it. And I went to the headquarters, and the first sergeant, a friend of mine, was supposed to play basketball on his team. And one Friday after practice, he said, I need help in the audit room. I said, I need to tackle that. He said, well, come on. So I went, and then the adjutant, the officer in charge of the audit room, saw me typing, and I was the back seat to find, not this, this. So when the officer came by and he saw me doing it, so what are you doing here? I said, well, I'm typing a letter. He said, you know how to type? I said, well, yes. Showing off now. That's semicolon, now, okay, good. On the key, on the typewriter. Anyway, and I really now, I can show off. That was on a Friday afternoon. Monday, when I went down to the line to my regular job, the sergeant said, you got transferred. What? How do I get transferred? I didn't make any questions. He said, you're in the Army. But I was transferred. Sent to headquarters. As I said before, up next was getting a promotion. When I went to headquarters. But the first day I got there, the sergeant said, okay, he pointed to a corner with a desk, a typewriter, and a sheet of white paper. And of course, you wouldn't guess, my first job, the duty roster. They gave me the duty roster, the typewriter. And about a week later, the sergeant said, it's not complete. Oh, yes, it is. So it's not complete. So the lieutenant had to be standing by and said, what's that, son? He said, I don't see his name pointing to me. His name. And I said to Mrs. Byron, they raised any dumb boys. And they just stupid. And we all that, but that's the good part about it. Bill mentioned about Chee-Ho. Chee-Ho is a station. Tuskegee didn't have a train station. Got off the train in Chee-Ho, and Chee-Ho was under a puddle of mud when we got down there because it was raining several days. We got to the base now. There we get to the base, they just put up some tents. But what they forgot to do was take the sides and kind of roll them down. So you can imagine what a tent looked like after the rain about 4 or 5 days. And we had about 10 cots in the tent. It was all ready for us, but the mattresses got wet. And we had no mattress to sleep on. So we just opened the rollers, put the clothes on, not put the clothes on, kept the clothes on. And said, now what do you think we thought about this kind of thing reading us? Somebody had to forget on purpose to leave their sides up. And all you had to do was roll them back down. We went, because we went back, at least I went. Some of it, but it was cold. But it was enjoyable. Just having to laugh. Freeze to death. Just having to laugh. And I think about, oh, boy, I forget this. We got back home at 45. In the early part of 45, I got a letter from home. And my letter from my sister saying that my brother was sent overseas. My brother was in the army 2 years before me. Before I left Morgan, in fact, he was in Fort Belva, Virginia. And he's come on to see me play football. They located him. The next morning, I got permission, of course, to get a Jeep. And I went looking, and I found him. My brother was kind of big. He weighed 320 pounds. When I went to his tent, after the death, they finally let me in, but when I drove up in the Jeep, they had a discussion. How did you get a Jeep, number one? He still think I'm my brother. Then when he realized I was not brother, they said, okay, let him in. I went in and when I got to my brother's tent, the father said, oh, come on, brother, what you doing here? Anyway, I said, where's my brother? He said, well, what happened? You know your brother's a pretty big man, 225 years. Where do you think he was? That's all. That's all. That's in the afternoon. Nothing over. But those are the pleasant moments that I enjoy. And Bill talked about Bill. Got out the Army 1945. July of 1945. June of 45, I landed the Wadi F. July of 45, I eloped with my college sweetheart, got married. 1940, June, July, August, September, I got out the Army. September 9th, September 25th, I went back to school. 1947, I got my bachelor's degree in chemistry and mathematics. That was my majors. 52, I got my master's degree from New York University, all on the jail rights. Carried all the way through. And then later on, after GeoBill time, I went and got a doctorate degree. Using the last bit of bill of rights that I had. I got a doctorate degree from Temple University. So I didn't do too bad. I didn't do too bad. I didn't like to do bad. But anyway, I said, no, anyway.
There's one over there.
What is the airplane's color and what does it look like? Airplane.
I know what you said.
What do the airplanes look like?
Oh, where's that? Okay, it is. Well, we had several airplanes. We started off with a 40. Well, that's the last one. Had a red tail one.
That was
identification. That's all it was. When the B-32nd joined us, or we joined them, the story goes, they said, well, it's pink. And the guy said, well, I don't have anything with red paint. Pink. So they painted the tails red and the spindle like nose of it red. So we were known as the red tails. Yeah.
Isn't it true that right after the war, when they started that Top Gun flying competition, weren't
Yes.
the Tuskegee Airmen the first to win that or something?
The first time we got in it was out there in Arizona. They had a Air Force, like the Olympics, with each unit, bombing, strafing, shooting, anything that American airplane could do, they had to do. And we went in, they allowed us in the first day we got back. We won 2 of the 5 competitions. They didn't have it next year. I'm not saying anything, I'm just giving the facts. They stopped it the next year. Big thing was one and targeting was the same. Those two. And what you can do is plane, hit that chair, for example, going 100 miles an hour. They win. Next year, no more.
I'd like to add that they didn't even bother. It took several years later before they even got the trophies. At a big Tuskegee Airmen convention, a general showed up, apologized, and they got the trophy.
Well, it took us 62 years to get all of them.
How are things nowadays in the military, in the Air Force, regarding heritage?
In terms of segregation is still there. That's the history. But not as rampant as it was then. You see more of us in color in office, charging things, and those kind of things, they get promoted. But now, Davis Jr. was the first general in the Air Force. His father was the first general in the Army. But now we got, what's his name? General, the new one. He just got it. I did. Once one and the other one.
Well, General Coleman Powell
Yes.
was the top Army officer, uniformed officer of the armed forces. We've also had a person of color that was the Secretary of the Army, and had not been for Clifford Alexander. Clifford Alexander stopped a promotion list to general by the Army because there was no persons of color on it. And it so happened when it got redone, Colin Powell ended up being on it.
It's tough. I want to say, okay, we now see it coming up. Next time you get the president of not color, then the Army, that was worse. And even in the Navy, I read about 3 or 4 days ago that the first integrated ship was in the Coast Guard. They call it Sea Cloud. It was a yacht which was converted over. And I didn't know that. And that's the rest. Thank you so much.
General Counsel of the Department of Defense.
That's very good. Yes, and that's come a long way from, that used to be way back in the 40s. Some of the people of color that worked in the Pentagon, they have them behind a curtain. They couldn't be seen. Well, we want you, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the East Coast chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen, we appreciate you providing us the opportunity to be here. We hope we've enlightened you like the Buffalo Soldiers have enlightened you. There's a lot of history that's been left out. I would tell you to make sure when you think something isn't totally correct, to question. Ask people to show you some of the facts. And, you know, when I think about when I first went in service in '51, I didn't see a lot of future. And for you ladies, I want to say something to you in the audience with the ladies. During World War II, when Dr. Byron talked about the postal services and getting their mail, I want you to know that the 6888 Postal Service was predominantly an all-black women command that ran the post office. And that's how all of them got their mail. And the lady that was their commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charity Adams, she was the major at that time, she was black. And, you know, things have come a long way. You know, when you had that, not too long ago, you heard about that ship where the captain, that the Somalians or whatever they were, captured. Well, I want you to know the person that got him free was a woman, black, rear admiral, who is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy. And I want you to know that in the Navy has had one 4-star admiral, several 3-star admirals. Right now, the commander of the 5th Air Force in the Far East is a 3-star black Air Force general. The Marine Corps, when I retired, didn't even have, just got a full colonel. Now we've had several generals, to include one being an astronaut who now is in charge of NASA. So things have progressed. And specifically to the question this gentleman asked, in the Air Force and in the Navy, the reason we want you to help keep kids in school, young people today, if you don't have technical skills, you're not going to get anywhere civilian or military. Now, during my young days, during Dr. Byron World War II young days, the Army especially took people that were not educated. Well, it cannot do that now because we're into the computer world, all this time. So you got to put things in perspective. Now, if you're willing to do your part and willing to learn, there's not a service that can't find something for you to do. Now, if you want to hang on the street and see if you can get blackjack, hey, that's on you. We don't subscribe that from the Tuskegee area. Any more questions from our Well, again, we wish to thank you.
This has definitely been a pleasure to experience and to have a living textbook here and to have all of these people come here and share and tell the story. I think it's just an awesome experience. On behalf of the NAACP, we'd like to thank you, and on behalf of Cafe 611, we'd like to thank you for coming out. And we look forward to maybe having more programs like this for our community. I'd like to thank Ms. Belva King and Mr. Michael North for their flyers and their help, their undying help. It has been very nice. And I'd like to thank Ms. June Stewart for coming out too, and everyone else. Thank you. It wouldn't have been possible without your presence. At Springbrook High School, that's in Silver Spring, Maryland, we'll have a program featuring the Howard University Community Choir, the Alpha Step Team, and they will have book signings and refreshments, and it's free to the public. And that's tomorrow at 4 p.m. at Springbrook High School. Thank you.
And on March 7th, 1942, those gentlemen that were cadets and Captain B.O. Davis Jr., that's when they first got their wings as pilots of the Army Air Force.
Yeah.
We are now closing. Thank you. Please, this is an opportunity to take pictures and get autographs and everything else, but I would like to share something we do here. Randy Jones have a little secret for you.
I believe in leading from the front. My shining light, along with Lord Jesus Christ, is my grandmother. Mama, could you stand up for a second? Stand up. Stand up, Mama. Okay, can someone help my grandmother over here for a second? My grandmother's 93. I mentioned that when we first opened today, and I wanted to close with her. Don't let the old girl fool you. She moved around pretty good. Well, Mama don't know I'm doing this. She's 93, born July 24th, 1916. And Mississippi sharecropper. And lots of the history that went on today. She lived through late parts of that. And, I think she's, without a doubt, the oldest person here today. But Mama, I'm paying for your membership today in the NAACP. I believe you should lead from the front. And I'm going in my wallet right now. And I'm hoping that this would ignite someone else here to lead the pack of one of the oldest people that's in Frederick. And maybe we can spark up some membership here. What is a membership for a senior citizen?
Okay. Membership 30.
Okay. Membership for a senior citizen is $30, and I'm paying for my grandmother today to be a member of the NAACP, and I challenge anyone else to follow that lead today. Mama, it took you 93 years to join any organization. Her organization, the only one that she joined was the Cotton Pickers of America. She was a Mississippi sharecropper, and she said she has no desire to head back towards the South again, so this is where she decided to make home. And I can tell you none of us would be here at Cafe 611 today if it wasn't for my grandmother. Mama, I love you.
Thank you, new member.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. And it's been an honor and a privilege for me to have been here and experience this. And I don't think any of us will leave here the same way we came. We've learned quite a bit of the hidden history, and then to actually be able to share with living history is so very important. Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the grace extended to us, for this is the day that you've made, and we're rejoicing in what we've experienced today. And we pray for continued strength for those who have the brunt of the heat and the problems, and yet stand with your grace and with confidence that when you are with us, we can do all things. And so I pray for blessings upon this organization and all those who have participated. Bless us, and may we look to you, for you are the source.